All right. Thank you, Eugene, for inviting us tonight. By the way, the previous presentation was phenomenal, and I think this company looks great. A lot of perks, toys, pizza. Thank you so much for hosting the event. And let's start with just formal introduction. My name is Igor. I lived in LA for 4 years. Before I lived in Bay Area, San Francisco for 18. Currently working at Tinder as engineering manager, responsible for mobile releases, including quality and continuous integration, continuous delivery for entire Tinder pipeline. And on the left-hand side, we have Boris. Boris is iOS engineer at Tinder, working on the most important part of the application, which is authentication and onboarding. And at free time, we have a hobby we teach. We're actually scholars. We have a small program for automation, CI/CD, performance testing, which we teach every other quarter. So that's what we're doing for fun. And today we're actually going to talk about a very interesting topic, is native mobile automation in a context which called shift left. How many of you heard about the terminology shift left? Awesome. And how many people who sit here actually doing some sort of, engineering? Could be DevOps, test automation, anything. Great. That's awesome. It's good to see all the engineers here. So today we're going to specifically talk about iOS test automation. So the biggest question, why native mobile test automation? Why do we need that, right? That's what actually a lot of people who especially started in the quality field, they ask you this question, why like every job requires web? I don't see much about mobile, right? But let's find out why. So there's a humongous market share, right? Look at all of you. Everybody I can see in the lab have a cell phone, right? None of you have actual laptop open right now. I would say that nowadays, they say 70%, I would say 90+% of people, especially in the United States, in this country, using mobile devices for everything. From booking car, from booking hotel, social media, talk to the friends, sharing everything, right? So your life actually happens on the mobile devices. That's probably the most important thing, why we have to think about mobile quality more than anything today in 2019. Another one is very few experts actually know how to do the mobile test automation. And that's why a lot of companies don't even know whom to hire, whom to look for. Schools do not teach that skill. There's not a single university that will actually teach you how to do mobile test automation. It's a self-learned skill as of today. And there's another problem is that in order to be a good mobile test automation engineer, regardless, iOS or Android, you have to be at least a junior level developer. You have to know like the platform you're testing, which is the next a very important point. You get a lot of money for this job, right? You get at least 6-figure salaries, right? Nowadays, a lot of companies willing to pay premium for these engineers. You're gonna ask, hold on a second, Igor. I go shop online, right, for any like LinkedIn or Glassdoor, and I don't see any job descriptions for mobile test automation. Remember what I said earlier? A lot of people don't know whom they're looking for. However, companies like LinkedIn, for instance, right, or companies like Fitbit, there are a few of them I can name, they know exactly who they're looking for. And Tinder's not an exception. And these people need it? Absolutely. They're in a huge demand. However, they do not exist. That's the true reality, right? Engineers, and Boris on the left-hand side can actually say, absolutely yes, he's an engineer, do not want to do testing. It's a real fact. Engineers want to develop features. That's how they, that's their profession. That's how they enjoy their jobs. And who's supposed to do this job? And logically, any manager, and we have quite a few managers here, turn to the beloved QA folks. It's like, why don't you go ahead and learn engineering and do this job? But it's not easy, right? Nobody wants to go back to like 4 or 5 year college to do that. But like I said, the reward is that it's a lot of money involved in this field, and that's why native mobile automation is very, very hot right now, extremely hot. So there's a few things happening. We have a huge shift in the QA trend. And there are a few reasons for this. So first of all, the mobile DevOps process requires fast and reliable feedback, right? So if you work in a company as the in quality today, you probably keep hearing that we need to ship faster. We need to ship faster with a good quality. Some companies ship bi-weekly. Some wants to ship weekly. I say, come on, accelerate, press the pedal, keep going, right? Raise your hand if you feel that pressure. Raise your hand if you work in a company, keep pushing the bar high, right? Exactly. That's the reality of today's market, right? However, how you can keep doing this with only manual testing, right? Manual testing will always be there, but you need to leverage it, right? So for that reason, remember what I said earlier, engineering practices, right? You have to be engineer. Therefore, the mobile test automation should be part of engineering practices, should be part of engineering process. And that's what the trends we see. I mean, I put generously here 2018, 2020. In reality, it's actually started 2015, 2016. Okay? So what does actually shift left means, and what are the main aspects of this? So in order for your test automation solution or your test to qualify for that terminology, they have to be scalable, right? You have to write or execute the frameworks in such a way so whenever the number of tests growing, the coverage growing, obviously the most important thing will be reliability, right? You cannot write tests which is not reliable, right? What is say the flaky test, even worse than having no test, because you spend more time on fixing them rather than actually they make any good, any benefit. Speed. Remember what I said? Companies want you to release faster. They want you to roll out to production literally in hours. So speed of execution becomes so important. Nobody wants to wait for 24 hours turnaround. They want all your tests to run as fast as your CI, continuous integration system. If I'm a developer, Boris is a developer, make pull request with the changes, right? His unit tests run like in 5-10 minutes. So if you want to run your functional automation test along with it, they have to qualify also within 10-minute time bracket, not more. Boris doesn't want, he's impatient by the way, he doesn't want to wait for hours, for the CI to pass. So it's very important. And another thing is orchestration. So all these 4 components are must present in your testing infrastructure for mobile test automation in order to be successful. Orchestration, a lot of people think, Igor, what do you mean by orchestration? What I mean is that if my test fails during execution, I have to have ability to extract it quickly with little noise so developers will not raise their oh my God, your test is failing, it's flaky, turn it off, right? So how you can orchestrate the test in such a way so you can inject them in the main test execution suite and remove it with little noise. Another big thing about orchestration, what I'm talking in this presentation, is also quarantines, right? When you write a test, everybody knows they're the best engineers. Do you know any engineer will tell you, oh, I'm a bad engineer? No, they say, I'm the best engineer. I know, but yeah, people like shaking, no. Yeah, absolutely, every engineer think they are the best. Therefore, they're gonna say, I develop bug-free features, right? So there's no problems. So orchestration becomes very important when you injecting new test. When you write a new test, you think it's working because you're a great engineer. But guess what? There's a huge possibility it might be very flaky for various reasons. So you need to, like a good wine, you have to age it for some time, test it for reliability before you inject that test into the mainstream, right? Otherwise, you're introducing another obstacle, another problem to your pipeline. So again, I'm going to repeat: scalability, reliability, speed, and orchestration are the main components for the successful test development and ecosystem for mobile test automation. And we're going to the next slide, which is CI. How many people, sorry Boris, Boris is gonna actually speak about CI, and because he's a developer, he's gonna talk about testing from development point of view. Raise your hand if you ever dealt with any mobile or even non-mobile CI system, so we can see how many people know continuous integration. Good. Few.
And how long does it take into your company?
Yeah, how long it takes? Like you can say 30 minutes, 1 hour. Oh, do you know how long CI takes in your company?
40 minutes.
40 minutes. That's pretty long. So the reality is this: if you haven't dealt with CI and you want to progress in your career, you will one day deal with continuous integration. I promise you. Everybody in this room, if you're in quality or in engineering, some way or another, you will deal with the continuous integration system. Boris?
Yeah, let's look at the process from engineering side. So how does the process look like today? I'm an engineer. I'm working on my feature and I'm doing PR, right? Raise your hand if you know what PR is, right?
Pull request, right?
Cool. Right, so my PR has a couple of required checks, obviously, right? Usually it's unit tests, lint, if we're talking about iOS development, it's Swift lint, right? And I'm required to pass those checks, otherwise I cannot merge my PR, right? So after those checks are done, I should get minimum 2 reviews. Sometimes 3 are required. So real people will take a look at my work. After that, we'll generate some build, right? Develop build, release build, hotfix build. We know what the process is, and then this build is going to QA. So QA are testing this build, where let's say it's daily regression, night regression, whatever. And they find a bug. What's the next step?
Come on, QA folks. What's the next step?
Send the feature back to you.
They found this bug, right? And I am, as a developer, I receive this ticket, and I say, well, sometimes I will fix it, right? That's what happens. Only if it's P0, obviously, I will be forced to fix it. But if it's some P2, P3, I mean, sometimes I will fix it, but it's priority number 10. And that happens like with every developer. You probably feel this pain. I mean, I'm sure you do. So what shift left concept mean is let's shift this regression to the CI parallel. So let's run functional test automation with unit tests and lint. That's it, right? Very, very simple. However, it's not. To do this, you should meet all 4 criteria Igor talked about. It is really hard to force functional test automation to be run in CI. Why? It should be very stable, because if it's not stable, and if you have, like usually we have hundreds of tests, right? And if you have a bunch of tests that are flaky, CI will block developers, and developers will not like it, believe me. So, because they need to wait 40 minutes for their CI, and suddenly some test is flaky, so they need to, I don't know, fix this test or rerun the CI. It just takes time. Tests should be fast enough, because as Igor mentioned, like we have this CI time right now, and nobody wants to wait for CI more than it's already, it's already like 40 minutes, and theater it's like 1 hour. I don't want to wait 2 hours on this. 1 hour is way too long, to be honest. Then orchestration means if there is some tests that, well, we have 2 reasons for tests to fail, right? First one is real bug. Even if it's real bug, sometimes really it's not a priority. It takes a long time to fix, so we should be able to do some orchestration with our test suite, so it stops blocking the CI because of this particular failure, right? We don't want to commit a change with disabling this test and then run CI again. It's too long. So we should orchestrate much faster. Scalability means we just wanted to add more tests because real enterprise project will have hundreds of tests. And if you are doing like tests without architecture, without scalability, without design patterns, obviously you will not be able to maintain hundreds of tests. It will be just hard for you. Okay.
Thank you, Boris. So for that reason, you have to coexist with the environment, with the same set of tools that developers actually work day to day. Which means if it is iOS development, it's obviously Xcode, right? So you have to deal with a native solution for one simple reason. You're living in the same ecosystem, same code base. And then you don't have much choices. If we're talking about iOS, it is XC test. A lot of people heard about XUI test, but in reality, it's actually the XC test is the framework used for the unit testing. It's used for performance testing, for integration testing, and functional UI testing. So XC test is actually the main library used by Xcode, and XUI test is just another very lightweight library that ships with Xcode. It's 100% native. You on your Mac download Xcode, it's actually already with it. So you have to now think just like a developer and live with the same ecosystem. And if it is like, for instance, Android, there would be probably Espresso, right? So why XUI test, right? Why we have to deal with this library? So like I mentioned, it's part of Xcode. What it means, every new version, Apple announcing the new bug fixes in the XUI test library, new features will be shipped right away. So you get it by default, which is very important, right? Unlike third-party tools, you have to wait for some time until they adjust. So tests live in the same code base as your application on the test, which is very important because you will exist in the same ecosystem and your developers will help you out, right? Because you live in the same code base. They will review your pull request, and your pull request becomes the same set of pull requests as the features. So testing becomes part of your daily development process. And easy to start, and in a few minutes, actually less than 2 minutes, Boris is going to do a quick demo how easily, like literally in 1 minute, you can start writing tests in XUI test. The setup is out of the box in Xcode, doesn't require a long time. I mean, you're going to see it, it's actually under the minute.
Raise your hand if you worked with Apple before. How long does it take to set up the app?
It varies, right?
Yeah, it varies obviously, but if it's a fresh Mac, let's say, it will take time. It will take a couple of hours probably, I know. Depends how lucky are you, to be honest.
The best scenario, maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour. Worst case scenario, a couple of days. Depends on the project, right?
Yeah, so this is super tiny demo. Like 30 seconds will be enough to start the actual test, to run the first dummy test, which is not very productive, but it's a test and it works. So we just need to create a test target, and it will create the template for us. So if we run this test example, it will launch the application under test, which is Order.me, our demo app that we built for this reason. And that's it. Test passed. It's empty, but it works. It takes literally 20 seconds to start. We don't claim it's easy to write good tests though after, but it's you can start really easy. Where's my presentation? Okay. Yeah. So now a couple of words about we use this term scalable architecture, right? So what is scalable architecture? Probably you know this the most famous design pattern page object, right, for web. Obviously, you can do something similar with mobile. We call it screen objects because basically there is no pages, web pages in mobile. There are screens. So you can just deal with screens. You can abstract your screens and do the same thing you're doing in web with page object. Also, it's really requirement to to create the real scalable architecture, you should use the biggest part of Swift features, such as protocols, the pluses of object-oriented Swift programming, generics. Like you should literally know Swift an advanced feature of Swift to build this real scalable architecture. One more really important thing is we think it's really hard to do the scalable test without mocking network layer. So who've heard about stubbing or mocking? Why do we need this? Give me some reasons, please.
Well, you don't want to hit production.
Okay, that's true. You don't want to hit production, right?
But why? Why you don't want to hit production?
I don't want to.
Yeah, but why you don't want to? Why you don't want to? What's the reason?
I don't want to buy real products. I want to use more clerks. I want to, yeah.
Okay, that's number one reason. Good. Anybody else?
Any guesses?
Yeah, sometimes you have to simulate situation like any failed transaction and all this stuff. Mocking is the best way to do that.
That's really good one. Yeah. So let's see. That's how the normal application works, right? We have the client-side iOS application. In our case, it's under the app, and there is a backend server. And backend server deals with payments, reservations, the real database, right? And client, via REST or HTTP, in most cases, somehow interacts with this backend. It's really hard to do test setup, right? Because the data is real, so you cannot pre-set up whatever you want for your test. Backend has continuous deployment, right? People change backend really often. If you work in enterprise, there are like more than 100 backend developers in Tinder, for example. They change backend really often. There is some network latency, obviously, right? You cannot control how fast is your internet, so obviously you cannot guarantee the stability. And there is no way to simulate failures and errors, really important. As QA, we want to test edge cases, failures, and how would you simulate 400 or 500 errors if you work with real backend? We don't want to stop the backend server, right? So the solution is let's just mock the network layer. There are multiple ways we can do this with XQA test. There are a bunch of open source libraries. We show in our courses Ambassador and Tunnel, Tunnel. So basically, there will be some local host server that will intercept all HTTP requests and will respond with pre-set up data. The pros are very simple. We can orchestrate this test, right? We can, every test will preset its own condition, preset its own data. It's really convenient. We are independent from updates on the real production. And we don't have any more latency. And obviously, ability to test failures. And one more important thing is analytics. Analytics is a very important thing in every company, right? And it's really hard to test it manually. You should intercept all requests, you should browse web channels, and so on and so forth. It's really hard. So you can stop server and intercept all analytics requests with this schema, which will give you a benefit to just compare what is desired analytics and what is real analytics. And we do some consulting, and believe me, like the number one bug is analytics everywhere, because it's really hard to test. So small demo with stop. Not much context for the app, so I'll try to explain. The same app, Order Me, allows to order in restaurants. Basically, we have this stop. We use Ambassador in this particular example, and we can pre-set up, let's say for this endpoint, whenever a client will do /places get request, return empty response or return 500. And then we have two tests. We have test server error will return 500, and we will test how client treats this 500, how client works with this, and test empty response, how client will treat if just response is empty, what the client side error. And here's it, error internal server, right? Every app will have its own behavior, so you can double check it. And empty response will also validate that app works correctly with this error. It could not load any process.
There are
Okay.
other benefits with the network marketing that actually, there was a great presentation in Slack on DroidCon, but the most important thing that many people probably, if you're an automation engineer, have heard about that, but that term, it's called Hermetic testing. How you can actually test things in isolation, right? Because the board said when you're dealing with live data, you're dealing with like A/B test. Like at Tinder, there are like 30 A/B tests just per feature. How, like there's so many variants. The results could be unpredictable because this could be like, all these experiments can be turned on and off at any time by marketing team, right? How you can control outcome of live things like this. And hermetic testing means that I set up before my test execution the data I want to see. If I want to see the restaurant, let's say McDonald's, I always going to get McDonald's, right? And 100% I know that client works fine. Again, if you remember the Michael Kahn's test pyramid, right? Very famous test pyramid. There's always UI layer on top, or functional test layer, how they call it, and there is integration test or the REST API test in the middle. So if you're gonna look at the industry right now, you're supposed to test all these layers in isolation, right? If it is the UI bug, you have to know it's UI bug. It is actually the iOS client failing, not the backend. A lot of times when we get failure, we have no idea. We think it is a front end, but it's actually back end, right? And it takes time to debug. You have to go through the charts. You have to look at the backend responses. Like you're like breaking your head against the wall, and you realize, okay, this is not front end, this is back end. You spend 30 minutes to debug, sometimes hours. With this approach, you know exactly it's a client, right?
Don't get us wrong, backend testing is very important. You just need to do it separately
Yep.
from client.
So what I would like to say that what you just seen in the presentation, we teach that. We teach something that not a lot of bootcamps, not a lot of people actually teach. We teach enterprise level test automation with the XUI test. And this is 4 weeks immersive program where we actually embed you in a world-like environment where you basically working like a developer with pull request, working on the merge conflicts. It's like a real, like, you know, it's not the sunny day. We're not going to show you how the actually day-to-day looks like a fun day. We're going to show you what's a bad day of the developer means. But that's the only way to learn the reality, right? We are doing test-driven agile process where we actually in the GitHub create issues, assign to the teams, to break the entire classroom to teams of 2, and do pair programming, best practices that actually exist in the engineering world, and try to embed you in the environment, which is similar like we do at our jobs and our consulting work. And we actually do it on a real project. Like you've seen Order Me, that's the app we use for our demos. That's what we use for our classes. It's the app was built by our developers, partially by Boris as well. And that's the real simulation of real work environment. That's the only way to learn that. It has actually a real backend as well. And the most important thing that a lot of bootcamps try to cut the corners or the courses is to give you the what I say that, you know, intermediate architecture. We teach you the enterprise architecture. Is like how to scale beyond 100 tests, right? How to build a framework which can sustain that, like, you know, stress of daily development. And there's a lot of tips and tricks that we learn ourselves hard way for the past 4 years, because XUI has been there like only for like what, 2016, right? It's a very new framework. So a lot of people don't know what they're dealing with. So we expose you purposely to these situations, so you're gonna feel like, oh, this is what's up. That's the reality, right? And that's the only way to actually dive people into this environment. Don't get me wrong. There is very hard to learn the entire iOS development in 4 weeks. Let's be realistic. But what will help you out, we set up for success to put you on the rails, right? To basically, so you can steer by yourself after the 4 weeks. We build a roadmap for you, is what you have to do next to continue to develop your skills, right? But we put you in the right direction and give you enough skills to come to the work and not get scared, right? Because if people come to work, like Boris went to USC. He has, from USC, he has a computer science master's degree. He come to the work, he doesn't know how to make pull requests. They don't teach that in school. They don't teach how to resolve merge conflicts in school either. They don't teach you how to work with 35 developers on the same repo. Nobody teach that. And that's the problem with a lot of programs. They actually teach you how to work by yourself. We teach you how to work in a team. So that bootcamp will start actually on November 16 in conjunction with the amazing company and folks from the Test Pro. It's our unified project. So if you're really interested in this particular program, you can approach me, Boris, Eugene. We can talk more about this. And that website, the link over there, has all information in details if you are interested.
Yeah, so as I said, as Igor said, it starts on November 16th. We're gonna post the link in Meetup group. So if you have any other questions, please approach Igor, Boris, and myself. And another thing I wanna say, besides that we're doing our bootcamps, and the whole idea of Test Pro is to establish the QA community. Not that bootcamps who will be competing to each other like, oh, come to us, we are better than them, or vice versa. My idea is that to wrap all best practices under one roof, so it doesn't really matter. We have teachers from, for example, New York as well, who are really good engineers in the back end. And Igor, to be honest, I don't know the better bootcamp with mobile test automation. So that's why we decided to just collaborate. And that's pretty much it. Any questions so far?
What is the price for this project?
We'll get this in the link.
So I noticed it's specifically for iOS only. Why only iOS, and what about Android, and what? Just wondering why you picked only iOS.
We actually teach Android as well. Thank you for asking. And the Android will be in February next year. It's just the one that we're currently going to teach in November 16 will be iOS focused. And actually, good question you asked. Why we are doing presentation only for one mobile platform? So as we said earlier, mobile is such a unique space that if you focusing on one platform, that's your entire career. I never seen a single developer that's been doing the Android all of a sudden switch to iOS. Same thing, the backend engineers they stick with the backend, web engineers stick to web engineers. So if you want to be good at something, I would recommend to stick with that for at least 1 year. At least 1 year until you become really good at this. Then you can make a decision and say, you know, I learned iOS, I want to move somewhere else, I'll try. Don't try to jump back and forth. So we encourage students to actually stick to one platform and make your entire career in one platform.
Sorry, follow-up question?
I just wanted to say that all those approaches we showed are totally valid for Android. We use Kotlin as a native framework for Android, and we also show stubbing, mock, and scalable architecture. Everything is the same. But as Igor mentioned, you just need to focus on one platform.
So, but for maintenance, you would have to do two different, like, let's say I'm QA somewhere and I need to implement automation, I would have to do one for Android and one for iOS with this method.
You have to hire two people, yes. That's the reality. At Tinder, we have three stats, software developers and tasks per platform. Separate people, separate skills. I mean, they're engineers. Remember what I said, you have to be somewhat engineer. You cannot automate the platform under test if you don't understand how it's built. Unfortunately. I mean, I can lie, I can say, yeah, you can do that, right? But on the enterprise level, right? If you go to Google, LinkedIn, any big company right now, you're just simply not gonna get hired. But we dive into this. So what happens eventually to our students, right? They graduate from the bootcamp, they get a job. In 1 year, they get stolen into development. Because you're gonna know the whole code base. You'll know the whole app in and out. It's just natural. It's so hard for you to go, it's like, I'm a developer, hire me. It's like, you're not gonna pass the interview. It's so hard. But enter the space via the ASTAT role, It's a great step forward towards development. You have to understand your career path. It's not for everyone, absolutely. But this is like, remember what I said, it's such a unique space. Nobody teaches that, and nobody knows that. And the company is willing to pay a lot of money. I mean, a lot. I'm not joking. Should I say a lot one more time? A lot. I'm not gonna say out loud how much, but I can give you a ballpark. Do you want to hear this?
Just go to Glassdoor and check it out.
Just go to Glassdoor, yeah. In the Silicon Valley, ready to this, in Silicon Valley, former Tinder employee who was on Android got hired for Netflix for $300,000 a year.
Yep.
That's how good it is.
Well, let's do last question.
Hey guys, you have really good experience in mobile automation, and you told a little bit about market share in the beginning. Can you tell me why a lot of companies still using Appium? They still they don't do native automation.
That's my favorite topic. The guy who stays right behind you is gonna throw a ball at me. I'm just kidding. Honestly, I'm gonna tell right now sincerely that I love Appium, and I'll tell you why. I know the guy who started it, Jonathan Lips, is actually a friend of mine, believe me or not. And in 2013, I met him in person. That's how we became friends at GTAC, Google Test Automation Conference. I still have the video, and I'm ashamed of this. I don't show it to anyone. It was my first public presentation. I was scared, right? And that's how I learned about Appium. And I worked as a QA manager at Expedia, and I embedded that Appium in and out in the entire Expedia, entire 200 engineering team. I loved the Appium. However, at that time there was no other choice. Was no choice. XUI test didn't exist. Espresso was only introduced at GTAC in 2013, only introduced, and UI Automator was just pretty bad tool, I would say that. So Appium was at that time a sunlight, a sunshine, I would say. Everybody wants to use it because there was no substitution. However, over time, things got better. Apple's like, you know what, we have to do something about testing. And in 2015, they introduced a really bad version of XUI test, the first version. It took them 3 years to make it more or less usable. I would say 2018 was the only year you could actually use it. So guess what? Appium also didn't stay in the same spot. They adopted all of them. Under hood, they're using the same frameworks. They use XUI driver, they use Espresso driver. However, the industry changed. And as of today, I'm not gonna prescribe you to go with this solution, right, only. You have to evaluate. And I keep telling to all engineers, when you have the app, try all of them. You have to try. And a great example where I would use Appium, even myself, even today, is on the React Native or any cross-platform developing tools, because there's no better alternative, period. I wouldn't use this because this is pretty much, the app looks exactly the same on React Native as of Android and iOS, it's cross-compile. And that's a perfect example where I would just go and use Appium, right? However, what Boris showed, remember the CI pipeline, we're talking about native world where you have to ship fast and move fast, right? How you have to do this? You have to comply with the best practices. Even Jonathan Lips is gonna tell you the same thing. Don't try to abide to one solution. Try both, see what actually works for your platform.
And by the way, it's a myth that enterprise app will be the same for iOS and for Android. I mean, it's always some difference. Some features are developed already on Android, and they're only on the early stage for iOS, and vice versa. So basically, the idea of Appium that it will be possible to write a one test for both platforms becomes not that useful, because in the real life, the enterprise apps are different at the same point of time.
Did you answer the question? Good, thank you.
All right, let's give applause to